Hi, and let's get started on looking at memory part 2. And this week we're going to look at biology of memory, forgetting, and memory improvement. If a person has had a brain injury, what, if any, effect to memory is there? Exceptional cases in which individuals suffer memory loss as a result of brain damage to specific areas greatly advances our understanding of the mental processes involved in memory. We would otherwise not be able to examine how damage to specific areas affect memory due to moral or ethical constraints. That is to say, you can't damage somebody's brain just to see what it does to memory. If there are examples of naturally occurring, if you will, brain damage issues, then we can look at those things without the same sort of moral or ethical concerns. Some key cases include HM, you find this in your textbook, who suffered an anterograde amnesia after parts of his amygdala and hippocampus were surgically removed, and KC, as a result of a motorcycle accident, lost access to his personal history. If you remember from part 1, personal history is your episodic memory. Now, evidence suggests that procedural memories are stored in the cerebellum, while short-term memories are stored in the prefrontal and temporal lobe of the cortex. Semantic and episodic memories may be stored in the frontal and temporal lobes as well, but in different locations than short-term memory, while memory for fear and fear of objects is most likely stored in the amygdala. Now, that's an old part of the brain, which is basically the emotion and fear center, so that makes a lot of sense. The case of HM reveals that the hippocampus is essential in forming declarative memories, not only informing declarative but not informing non-declarative memories. The hippocampus appears to be responsible for the storage of new long-term memories. If it is removed, the ability to store anything new is completely lost. The case of KC shows how damage to the left frontal lobe can lead to severe memory problems. One of the first experiments on memory was by Hermann, now I'm going to screw his name up, but Ebbinghaus, I think, 1850 to 1909. Check out the resulting curve of forgetting that was developed by Hermann in your text. So, why or how do we forget? Well, we talked about alluded in part 1 about some failures, and one is encoding failures. We forget because the information has never been put into long-term memory. Just reading your textbook or notes passively without employing some sort of encoding strategy, a rehearsal, self-testing, mnemonics, then we are experiencing an encoding error. Our brain doesn't work in a manner that just strictly reading automatically puts it all in there to long-term memory and make it functional memory. That just means that if I'm asked a question about that content that doesn't ask for a specific piece of information but asks you to apply it, you can't do it because you haven't understood it. You might have had a photographic memory in order to remember it, but if you can't apply it, it makes no sense to you. Now, and the second possible reason is what's called decay. If we do not act on memory of something, this memory trace will gradually disappear. If you don't use it, you lose it. And that's another reason why cramming doesn't usually work. It doesn't give you the opportunity to work with the material in order to strengthen the pathway, if you will, of that information in your long-term memory. That enables you to retrieve it. If you've got a very thin line, if any at all, you may not find that when you need it, and that's why you can't find it. So decay. Interference. When new information or information you have already learned interferes with what you are now learning or trying to recall. Now, there's two kinds of interference. There's proactive interference. This is when information or experience is already stored in long-term memory hinder our ability to remember newer information. So if I don't draw a conclusion or draw a line between new and old, then they become discrete and independent and don't seem to be related to one another, and inhibits this new information being encoded. Or retroactive interference, when new learning or experiences interfere with our ability to remember information previously stored. Now, this isn't the limit. We can introduce into what's known as consolidation failure, when a disruption occurs during the formation of a permanent memory. Remember, the process of encoding to long term is called consolidation. If there's a process problem, this could be physical barrier, or it could be physiological, but it could be that we stopped doing what we were doing and then came back, but we didn't connect. Motivated forgetting is another reason that we don't recall. When we forget due to suppression or repression, when something is too emotional, either because of trauma or disasters, we might, in order to protect ourselves, forget the event. Retrieval failure, well, we know that when we know the answer but you can't retrieve the information when you need it, this can be more of a can't find issue. We may even experience the tip of tongue phenomena, where you can almost get it and you just can't get it out. Prospective forgetting is when we have trouble remembering to carry out actions in the future, such as appointments and times. So how about the what and how to improve your memory? Now, this is probably worthwhile. For study habits that you can aid memory or organization, overlearning, the use of spaced rather than massed practice, that's huge. And the use of higher percentage of time reciting than rereading material. So let's begin with the first one. Organization is really important in terms of memory. Information is best getting in organized in order to get it out organized. Your brain isn't so magical that you can put sporadic and discombobulated things all together in there, and your brain's going to sort it out in an organized manner on its own. If it goes in organized, it will come out organized. If it goes in disorganized, it will be just as likely to come out disorganized. The second one was overlearning. This means practicing or studying material beyond the point where it can be repeated once without error. And so I remember doing this in school. I wasn't the best student, but I remember having this experience and being told about overlearning. Is that if I would repeat something that I could now do those 10-stage processes by memory, or this big process by memory once, I needed to be able to do it 10 times before I'd say I'd know it. That was overlearning. Material that is overlearned is remembered better and longer, and it is more resistant to interference and stress-related forgetting. We are more likely to remember something if we overlearn it. That is, if we practice or study beyond the minimum needed to barely learn it, that's the best. Mass practice is also known as cramming, is not, and I repeat, is not an effective way to remember information. It is better to space studying over several sessions. That is, chunk it down. Take this bit of information, get a good handle on it. Take this kind of information, get a handle on it, and then relate it to this one. Take this one, get a handle on it, and then relate it to this one and this one. Now we're putting in more of what is spaced, and it's an effective way to remember. It's better to space studying over several sessions. Active learning is where we actually perform and act on the information, leads to better recall than simply rereading the information. Now, one of the ways that I applied this in my university career as part of my learning approach was to do things auditorily and visually, but also I needed a kinesthetic component. And this is where it touches on active learning. So I would physically walk around my apartment with paper on the wall, and I would write in colored pens or draw, more likely. But by that walking, it also engaged me in the activity to learn the information. So active learning is the actual performing of an act. Now, that's not performing an act, but it is actively engaging myself in the material, even if in a cursory manner. All right. Now, the only thing I can add to this information, it's not in your textbook, of course, but if you are looking for study strategies, please stop into your student services and ask for some information around study strategies. They often will allow you to meet and have a talk with somebody about some strategies. They've got handouts that you can look at if you're a self-starter yourself, but that's another thing you can do to get more strategies on improving your memory. All right, everybody, I hope this has been helpful. Good luck, and we'll see you next week. Bye now.